I can't stand when people say authenticity when referring to their brand or the stories they're trying to tell, because usually it's not authentic and it really isn't about the brand. It's about some conflated ego. So let's talk about ways to make your brand resilient, because if you misstep here, it can mean a swift and brutal takedown. So sit back, stay tuned, because this one's going to exhaust even me.
Brian, we have a lot of conversations about brand identity, authenticity, customer experiences, and they're all important.
They are.
It's like we're not thinking in big enough terms most of the time when we're using them. It tends to be window dressing. And a lot of times, if you're falsely going after that, it could be not so bueno for your business or your brand in the end. So you have to kind of take a step back from it and really understand. And I'm going to throw this at you because I think you have a really good perspective on what the word resilience actually means, because people use the word resilience too. And we've had some long conversations about the word resilient. Tell me what it means and what we mean by resilient brand.
I hate that you asked me that, because all I want to do is tell you the opposite of resilient. And the opposite of resilient is sitting in the corner in the fetal position, wetting your pants, sucking your thumb, wishing it would just all end. Resilience is really the ability to come back, to snap back time after time. You take your lumps, you take your successes, but you're there and you show up. You show up time and again, over and over. And this is a really simplification. I can give you a textbook definition of resilience, but it doesn't mean much otherwise. It's your ability to come back in the face of adversity, which is, it's critical. It's one of the reasons why at the head I mentioned that I don't like the word authenticity, because people use it. We're an authentic brand. What does that mean? If you were an authentic brand, do you actually have to tell me you're an authentic brand? The best things happen for us when clients say, you really understood you understood our business and you relayed that to the public. You really understood us. That's authentic. And that feels awesome. But if you have to tell people you're authentic, it's almost as bad as telling people, this is my brand. This is who I am as a person. No, just be that person and represent and keep representing, and don't change and evolve maybe, but don't change. Be that. Authenticity has to be part of this conversation, but I don't want to use that word, man. I just don't want to use that word. It's so played out.
How do you really feel about how do you really feel about it? I like to whenever people say, if I'm talking to someone, and instead of telling someone just be authentic, it's just be yourself, be you.
Be yourself.
That's very different. There's no show. If you tell someone be authentic, they're trying to think of the bullet points of that they need to cover or how they need to present or any of that kind of stuff. So just be yourself, just be you.
Well, that's why in meetings I'll very often with a CEO say something like, we just need to see everything warts and all. Yes. And they get it. They get, okay. And they trust us enough to show us even the parts that maybe we don't want to see, but that's how we get to authenticity.
It's interesting. And as you were describing, first of all, great. I threw it to you for the resilient brand side because, and what that actually means, because I think that you have a really great, clear explanation of what it's not, and then in turn, what it is. And there's a lot that goes in there. You talk about things like coming back, or, how you bounce back from a setback, and how you can come back stronger and all that.
Or just how you show up time and time again. It can be that simple.
It can be that simple. And wrapped in that, there's a lot that's wrapped in there under the hood, because to bounce back means that you have a particular type of relationship with failure, that you have built up this skill set, all these different skill sets that help you to compartmentalize things that are potentially not going right at the moment, whether it's in life and business or what have you. And those are some skill sets that you have to build up over time. So you can't just say like, oh, we're working on building a resilient brand.
Yeah.
You got to dig deep in there because there's some personal matters that you got to really deal with, who you are as a person and who the people are that you're surrounding yourself with in that company are important in order
so
to
true.
be resilient.
That's
So
so true.
I think that kind of dives into like the what's required, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much to this that sometimes I get lost in the where do you even take the conversation from that? Because you could literally end the end the episode right here, and I think it gave people enough stuff to think about. But the idea of resilience, authenticity, and brand. Let's talk about what's required when you think about a business. So we've been in business 22 years. How we have reacted to major events in our history has evolved over time. And it shows the trajectory of growth for us as people and as business owners, as professionals, and really just as humans. What is it that it takes to get to that place so that others can maybe get there sooner?
Well, if you're talking about the resilience, you got to look at if you want to get ahead of it, you've got to look at the trends. You got to see where everything is going, where their client is going, where the industry is going, where the economy is going. Who is it? Gretzky, who said, you don't wait for the puck to come to you, you skate to where it's going to be. Something to that effect.
Yeah,
I'm misquoting horribly.
Yeah.
But I think it was Gretzky. But that's the point. Go and be waiting for that to arrive and get there. And if you can adapt ahead of time, you're ready to offer solutions that your clients didn't even see coming. And that has to be based on what you missed. The only way to look forward is to see the trail that you've beaten along the way and said, we used to have a saying in Hens, specifically in the early days, we are one step ahead of the oncoming wave. We are one step ahead of it. We see it, we're one step ahead of it. If we could get 5 steps ahead of it, we'd be billionaires. And that's it. It's saying the wave is coming. Where do we need to be when it crashes? Where do we need to be when it breaks? So as you're looking at this, you've got to figure that out. Figure out what it is locally as well as globally in order to figure out what the massive trends are, not just the ones for your clients. See if they align. If they don't, act as an advisor. Try to show them what you're seeing. And if they have their own vision, see how what you're setting them up for won't set them up for failure, but will set them up to glide into what's coming next, even if it's not in their immediate directives. And I think maybe the most important component here is to keep it as a value proposition. Whatever that value relationship is you have with your clients, if you can keep this service and growth and change as part of what you do for them, not something so brand new and outrageous that they have to buy into it first, but something that makes them say, yeah, this is worth investing in. This is worth time. We know what these guys are about, or this group is about. Then you will have the ability to take that resilience that you have endured, share it with your clients to show them what's coming, be there for them and catch them in a way that they like to be caught, as opposed to trying to sell them on something that maybe they don't need, maybe they don't see, maybe they will never care about. But by positioning all these things together, suddenly you've got this equity in your own personal brand, in your own authenticity of how you're arriving on scene with your clients. But to do that, you have to be fascinated. You have to be fascinated with how you endured to the point that you're at. And I usually shy away from any company that says, we never had any kind of trouble getting to where we are. Every business worthwhile did, because every business worthwhile has a brand that was resilient and pivoted at some point. The pivot could be small, but it was a pivot nevertheless. And that took looking back, looking ahead, and charting that trajectory. I may have really, 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 I may be leaning into too much of the way it exists in my mind. So you gotta keep me honest. Does this make any sense to an outsider?
I think it does, but I think that you're hitting on a few things. I think about mindset a lot when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
this because that idea of pivoting means that you're not locked into a specific product that you do, or what is it that you do for your clients. Well, we're problem solvers, and if we're problem solvers, that means that we're technology agnostic. It doesn't matter what we're using. It doesn't matter what
Mm-hmm.
kind of story we're telling. We're we're
Yeah.
we're doing one that is going to solve their problem. And that has a lot to do with that gives us the ability to pivot and to shift and change. And that has made us I think the resilience comes from that, because then all of a sudden when I've noticed that when something shifts in the economy, in the marketplace, our response, one, we see things happening, or if it's a total surprise, our reaction is much faster, and we're able to very immediately come to a decision of where we're going to head. Our discussions, we had one recently about, here's where things are. There were a couple of little surprises that came our way, and we very quickly had a sit down. We met and said, this is the direction that we need to head in. Here's the messaging. Here's how we're going to position this. Here are the channels that we have to. It just became just a matter of fact. That idea of, I think in the beginning when you're first in the business, or first getting into your career, there is almost you have bought into certain beliefs, and they're very rigid. And so when the change happens and it comes at you hard, there is a very long grieving process and almost a fight to try to keep what was before.
Yeah.
Where really the thing to do is flip that and remember that the things that you believe in are the solutions that you're providing at the moment. Those solutions for your clients have to keep shifting. They have to keep changing because their world is changing. So you have to be open to what that means. Resilience comes from all of these things banded together. I'm not going to get into the idea of personal brand and authenticity, even though we were sort of talking about that in the beginning. But I think that is part of where authenticity really shines, is if your message to the world is that we are here to solve our clients' problems, we are here to help them grow, the authenticity comes by your actions and by how you approach them, how you speak to them, how you're constantly looking for solutions for them without them even asking for them. That becomes your authenticity without us having to say we're an authentic brand because this is what we do. We just do it by proving it, showing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you take a look at almost the disservice that mission statements do. Most people think mission statements are a specific way, but any mission statement that doesn't say, we do this to provide a good life for our people by doing this, or we want to do this through this to get here. If it doesn't have a self-serving component, it's kind of a lie to itself. And I don't have a problem with that, but when you talk about authenticity, I think it's something like our goal is to provide a good wage to our people by creating great flour or whatever. I'm totally misquoting it, but it's like, how refreshingly legitimate. Mm-hmm. So I would say reframe, whether you're putting it out there for public or not, because let's be honest, when you're a little self-serving, it's not really the greatest look for a business in most cases. But you should definitely start with that internally. Mm-hmm. Figure out what that brand is going to do exceptionally to provide you with $1 billion before you retire. The world with the best whatever. How are we doing that? Why are we doing that? You're not doing it for the good of everybody else. You really aren't. Otherwise, you wouldn't be paying yourself any kind of a wage and pouring it all back into the company. And that's why I hate things like authenticity, because it's not. It's not authentic. So being legitimate discusses that idea of we are doing this for these reasons, and here's the mechanism by which we're going to get there. Yeah. So I look at it, and the first thing is, well, what do we want to provide? Well, like a good livable wage. Now, what do we want to provide outside? Exceptional video service that helps our clients connect with their audience. So by doing that, I'll have a livable wage? Question mark. That's the beginning, and keep going with it. And so, it's about, what do you want to provide? What do you really want to provide?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Because it's great. You want to grab a camera and go out and film these things for other people just out of the goodness of your heart? Great. I know very few people who can afford to do that. So therefore, there's a bigger meaning. And before we go any further, I highly recommend Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Simon Sinek's Starting With Why gets to the root of this. And it really helped me reframe the way I look at what we do for business. If I can provide exceptional video to help my clients connect with their audience, then I will feed myself. And that's awesome. So it's a 1-for-1. Out of the goodness of my heart, do we give away time and energy towards pet projects? Yeah. And part of that is incredibly selfish too. The reason we do that is we want a better community where we live. And understanding these components actually help you build a resilient brand, because that doesn't change. That never changes. I want to tell great stories for my clients. That doesn't change. How I survive and create the livelihood for my colleagues inside of the company doesn't change based on that. The mechanism by which we do these things changes. So it sort of, in a way, is a bulletproof to keep you on. Years ago, a very, very famous food manufacturer tried to dabble in sodas. And they're not a they're not a beverage company, but they tried to dabble. Soon they realized that's not who we are. That's not where we are. I give them, credit for trying, but that's not how they were going to get to do the things that they got to do. Yeah. By providing constant diversity to their current product lines and extend those within reason to what they are, was where they were going to find their success. And sure enough, decades later, they're still very, very successful because they follow what they need to follow in order to do all these other things. Maybe I'm convoluting it. I keep asking you because, to me, it starts to get emotional after a while, because it really is about digging deep and saying, what is it we're trying to do here?
Yeah. And I think, I don't think that you're convoluting it at all. I think it's ultimately, and I think this is also part of sort of the why it matters. Why is this important to the very survival of your business, and really how it can help you thrive as a person, because we're constantly changing and evolving. I think we have to, especially in the creative fields, we fall in love with technology. We fall in love with cameras, lenses. We have to use this or this. We're constantly told, like, oh, well, if you're not filming on this, it's not professional. You can't film on that. It's not professional. And the reality is, it's all professional if it's going to solve a problem for someone. We have to bring value to the people we're doing work for. And that value is best demonstrated with actual results. Real results come from, in our case, when we really connect to their audience in a way that nurtures them to actually become a customer. And we do that by having videos of every style and type that fits exactly where they are. Yeah. And that has nothing to do with technology. We have to figure out what technology fits for each of the different solutions, but it frees us to be able to move and pivot through all of this. And it's just been there's a freedom to it that has just been, it's indescribable, really, what that freedom feels like and what it has meant for our customers. Because they can openly have conversations with us that they weren't having before because of this. So I love that you brought up Simon Sinek's book. And by the way, we do have a link in the description below for those of you who don't have a copy. It's readily available. Use our link. It's an affiliate code, but we'll get a few cents to support the channel. But it's in the description below. It's a great book, and I'm glad that you brought that up and recommend it as a read, because I think that idea of the why are you in business? When someone says, "Oh, what do you do?" And usually we go to the technical thing that we do versus the actual,
go to the
when people
how.
ask me what I do. Yeah, we go to the, yeah. I tend to tell people what my why and what my how and my why are of what we do versus jumping into the technical side of it. One, it elicits many more questions when you go there, because people have a lot more that they need to find out about. Wait, what do you mean by that?
So years ago, I was when I was teaching, I had come across an article that I thought was ridiculous until I really stopped to think about it. It was about a roller coaster designer saying how we're storytellers. And that kind of bothered me, because we are storytellers, right? But the more I leaned into it and the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, you know what? That makes sense. We can use, and we have, in our line of work, we've used photography, we've used audio, we've used the printed word. We even made a cereal box to tell a story.
Yeah.
There are so many different ways to tell a story that if you don't limit yourself to this idea of, I'm a videographer, that's great. That's how I'm trying to do the why. And part of that is through telling stories to help my clients reach their audience. That's the mechanism. It doesn't matter how I do it. So while video is the primary focus here, video where? Video on a postcard? Done it. Video on a DVD? Done it. Video in a theater? Done it. Video on a multinational corporation's internal website? Done it. When you get there, you realize that the brand isn't about video. It's so much more than that. And if you can't reframe your mind about what it is or what it can be, then when a crisis comes and people stop making commercials on television and do nothing but web videos, are you prepared? Or are you just doing commercials for TV on the web?
Yeah.
Are you prepared to do reels for TikTok? Are you prepared to do, what are you prepared to do? Yeah. Now, not all of our clients care about any of that. Some of them do. Some of them do not. Some of them use us for portions of that. Some of them want to explore, and we will be glad to go along that ride with them. But when you lock yourself into one method, one approach, and that's it, then you are not building a resilient brand. You're building a brand that will be obsolete, and you can't get back up from that. You have to nuke it and start again. So,
yeah. And I should say that, we're talking about a company like ours that works with clients on the specific types of work. If you're someone who is on a track to be, you are completely focused on one very specific technical end of the industry, then there's different a lot story that applies to that, but it's slightly different because you are on a trajectory. But for the vast majority of us who do a bit of all worlds for our clients, this is where this is absolutely critical. And I think one of the things that it helps as we look at it is, it helps us. There's a lot of why it matters. But Brian, I feel like you wanted to say something to that.
Yeah, I want to say, but be careful, because even the people on a track, like I know people who make films, like out and out films for a living. Even they have to respond to different things. Low audience involvement at the theaters. How they're going to now start to deal with alternate sources of revenue by embedding product placements in different ways so that they don't feel as horrible as they do in some cases. They have to adapt. They have to adapt to a second audience on streaming platforms. They have to adapt to creating hits for social media. So even they are not immune to all of this. It just means keeping your eyes open and saying, what is it I'm really doing here? And how can I get ahead of whatever trend comes next?
Yeah.
Because if low participation keeps happening in the movie-going audience, theaters are going to close down a lot faster than they already are. So they've got to adapt for that as well. So I'm trying to balance this track with the idea of still keeping your mind open.
Yeah, because it's, examples of bad product placement are that spy thriller that's reaching the pinnacle, and, the spy has to stop to make that random cup of coffee in their brewer before.
Pull out the Doritos and start snacking.
Don't name Doritos. Doritos, we love you, and we'd love to work with you.
As a matter of fact, I'll hold up a bag every episode.
I know, we'll eat Doritos on this show. We're not shameless. We'll do that. But there's a lot of reasons why this ultimately matters, and I think we can wrap this episode is when you have it clear that why. The why is, forget the words authenticity and brand. Think about your why and your how. Like those two words, your why is huge. When you have a firm understanding of what that is, it helps you to make much better decisions. If you work on your messaging and how you present that out, Brian mentioned the mission statements, if they were external facing. People like Donald Miller, who they believe mission statements should just be internal. And your messaging on the outside, they don't need to see a mission statement. They just need to see, your content pushing that mission out.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I love that idea. But when you get your messaging down around your why, a lot of times it's what can differentiate you from all of the competition. Because you're very, very clear on what it is that you're providing for the value add for anyone who works with you. And ultimately, if you can build all of that, then that becomes your ultimate reputation. And that is the truth. That is like reputation is everything. And so as we talk about brand and authenticity and all that, it really comes down to that word, that reputation, and you build it by knowing what your why is. And so I think it's go back. I'm so glad that you brought up that book. I think that's this matters a lot, and you have to reframe it all and stop going with the trends of what people are using with these words, and get down to the core of what it is that we should be focusing on, and that's our why.
So, to wrap it up quickly, take authenticity and brand and reframe it. Forget that for a moment. How and why. Mm-hmm. How and why will lead you to what your brand is truly about.
Yeah. Love it. All right. Let us know what you think of this. If you are trapped in the authenticity and personal brand race, or have been giving this some thought, or something wasn't sitting quite right, or you completely disagree with us, let us know that too in the comments below. Thanks for being with us. We really appreciate all of you who have been watching our show and sending us feedback. And we look forward to having you on the next one. So long.
Stay safe, stay healthy.